Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by FounderSuite.com. Today with me is Daniel Senyard of Shep, coming to us from Austin, Texas. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So you're in Austin, and South by Southwest is going on right now. Is it interactive is over? Are we into is it the film or the music? What's going on right now?
Yeah, they've kind of changed it where the film sort of bleeds into both. So interactive ended on Tuesday, and now we're kind of in music, but film's kind of perpetual during South by at the moment.
Interesting. So how was South by this year? We've been the last 3 years as a company. We skipped it this year because we're going to New York instead. But was it a good? How was South by this year?
Yeah, South by was it was interesting. It was very different. I've done South by for several years. My first company was in music tech, so we obviously had to have a big presence there. So I've thrown parties, I've spoken on panels and such. And so this year I didn't want to try and burn myself out like I have in the past, trying to hit everything. So I was very, strategic and went to very specific things. Yeah. And I still it's a little tricky when a conference is in your hometown because you still have dishes, laundry, wife, kids, dogs, all that stuff. So I do like, going to New York for a conference because you can really dig in. But yeah, we had a kind of a cool thing actually happen on Monday. We happened to office at Capital Factory, which is an accelerator and fund. And I was up on my office on the 5th floor, and I got a text message from my friend Henry Yoshida. And so Henry texted me, said, Steve Huffman just mentioned you on stage. They just brought up your company, Shep. You should text him or, reach out to him through Twitter and see if you can connect and discuss. Because he just said that, starting a travel company was the hardest thing he'd done. And he's kind of in he was a co-founder of Hipmunk. So I happened to be in the building. So I thought, instead of just, tweeting him, I'll run downstairs and try and give him a business card once all the crowds have dispersed. And the founder of Capital Factory was actually the one who brought me up and said to Steve when he mentioned travel, he said, well, we've got a company in our portfolio, Shep, you and Daniel should trade war stories. So I came down and they kind of finished their kind of fireside style chat. And Josh Baer, the Capital Factory founder, kind of cut the Q&A short and said, we've got about 3 more minutes left. But I see that Daniel, who I mentioned, has just walked in. So, South by is all about these like chance encounters and taking advantage of the moment. So, Daniel, you've got 90 seconds, come up and pitch Steve in person. So, not ready to roll. I sort of, jumped up, went up onto stage, sat down with Steve and gave him my kind of 90-second pitch about what Shep was, and it went really well. I was very pleasantly surprised. Afterwards, he said, I love the concept. And he said, I'm trying to grill you here, but I think people are going to really love this. So like I wouldn't say I nailed it. It wasn't my best elevator pitch, but I've done this for so many years. I've done so many pitches that, I felt comfortable just being able to be up there, be a little conversational and get through it. And, I've now got a testimonial of, the founder of Hipmunk and CEO of Reddit saying he loves what we're doing and, loves the idea. And that then turned into a bit of kind of a lot of press and stuff. So I've been running around doing press over the last couple of days.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, I love these chance encounters, kind of seizing the opportunity. Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What is Shep? Give me your 90-second elevator pitch here.
So from a high level, what we do is we use data to create processes that increase trust and employee freedom. What that means in the travel space is we essentially help companies create a quick, easy travel policy. And then we get a browser extension installed in the employees' browsers, web browsers, that actually shows them what they're allowed to book at the time of booking. We literally put green boxes around the flights and hotels that are compliant. If they try and book something that's out of policy, we pop up a little modal and they can explain why. So maybe they need to be there by 10 o'clock for a meeting with X. That triggers a workflow, Slack alerts, an email. And it's basically just creating visibility on both sides. I know what I'm allowed to book. You know what I did book. There's no last, up to this point, what would happen is I travel, book today, I travel 2 weeks later, a month later, I submit an expense report, and then we've got a battle about reimbursement and such. So it's just kind of, without putting people in a closed, clunky booking tool, big enterprise tool, we're saying, embrace open booking, let your team book where they want, but with some guardrails up and alerts going back and forth.
That's interesting. That's pretty clever. Is it a SaaS model? Are the employers paying a monthly fee, or is the travel, flights and airlines paying you a commission or something?
Yeah, so we basically have a freemium model where we're able to monetize as an affiliate of a lot of these sites. So we can kind of support our free users. And then we're still an early stage company, so that's kind of what we just have in beta is our free model. And we're busy building out the pro model, which will include things like integration into Slack. So the alerts will go into Slack instead of email, Expensify, kind of expense management integrations. So if you want this existing in your workflow as opposed to a standalone product, then it will be a SaaS model.
That makes sense. Yeah, cool. Great. And how long have you guys been around? When did you start this?
Been around a little bit over a year.
Okay, pretty new. And you don't sound like you're from Texas originally. How'd you end up in Texas?
I was born in South Africa. British parents, ended up in London for a while, met an American, bounced around from, moved over to Austin after being in Seattle, Santa Barbara, lived in India for a little bit. So but we've been in Austin now for 10 years, so it seems like home.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you've seen a lot of changes then since in Austin, 10 years. That's awesome. Absolutely. I love that town. I went to grad school there, finished up in 2002, so it's changed a lot since then even. Awesome. So let's talk about your fundraising. How much have you raised so far? And is it friends and family, angels, VC? Tell me your.
So it's a little complex. We raised 1.4 of seed funding, basically is what we're calling it. But that was made up of 3 kind of increments. We raised at the very beginning of last year. We raised we raised 150,000 as a priced round, and that was a small friends and family round. And that was actually interesting because I had raised and lost $400,000 from an angel investor for my first startup, Vivo Gig, which was a music tech one. And, I was taught, by Josh Baer, the Capital Factory guy, he'd sort of said, the first people you need to go to with your new deal is your old investors. If you've lost the money, the worst thing you can do is actually then become successful and not have them profit. They paid for your university, essentially. They paid for your learnings. So I went back to this guy, and we'd actually kept in touch. Like from the beginning, there was never any bad feelings or anything. So I just, even afterwards, and he's told me he's out of tech investing. He's not doing it anymore. We just kind of kept in touch. And I went and, just had coffee with him and said, look, I know you're not investing. I'm not asking you for money, but I would feel horrible if this actually goes and you don't get the opportunity. So 3 days later, I had a $150 check in my hand from him. And he said, I'm not investing in tech. I'm out. I'm not interested anymore. But because of you, and I've seen you grow and learn as a person, I'm in. And so I think that really speaks to that relationship and that very maintaining, being honest. He kind of trusts me with the money without really even, grasping the idea and without any due diligence. He was just like, I'll invest because it's you and no one else, basically. Go
ahead. Oh, no, I was just going to say that is very interesting. It's sort of counterintuitive to go to investors who you've lost money in the past. But I totally makes sense. I probably wouldn't have thought of that. So that's interesting. Cool. So that was 150. That was a priced round. You priced around at 150. I mean,
Yeah. That was one of those things where this was a guy that I'd gone back, for years with. We were really close friends. He was sort of a bit of a father figure to me. Sort of in his 60s kind of thing. And he just sort of said, "Yeah, I'll write you a check right here." but I do want equity. He's not a big fan of convertible debts for whatever reason. And for him, because it was a relatively small round, we felt like we could use that money, really get a proof of concept out, a demo we can then raise on, and put enough time between that we can justify, doing a note after that. So he came in, and Capital Factory, actually, I was a entrepreneur in residence between my last company that I was part of and this one. So they actually came in on that round as well. They put in 25K. So the round was actually, closer to 175. And then we sort of got a demo going. We were able to show people, go to Expedia, book like you were going on vacation, but you can see exactly what's in or out of policy. And then we raised a convertible note round there that I can kind of get into the details of, but that included a lot of very strategic angel investors. And we got up to, the note was open up to 500. And that's another tip, is my lawyers had written in that we were raising a seed round of 500 up to $1 million at our discretion. At our discretion was very important because it meant if we were overcommitted, we could keep going instead of having to go and get approvals from all the note holders if you sort of capped yourself at the 500. So that was good. We got up to 460 and had an angel that had actually, a fund, a brand new fund called Moonshots Capital. They had been raising their funds from their LPs and weren't ready to invest. And they really loved what we were doing, but they were just like, look, we're probably a Series A, for you guys. And we got up to 460 and they made their first close and said, hey, we can write a check. So I had 40,000 available in the initial, the 500, or I could go up to, 540. But they, as a fund, kind of had a mandate that they were required to take a certain ownership stake, which meant they had to invest more. So they actually said, look, we need to invest 750 at X valuation. So that essentially turned into a new round. So we kind of went from a convertible round on Thursday to a priced round on Friday. All the people who were in the note converted in. So that's why I said it's a little bit of a complicated fundraise.
We actually, for Founder Suite, did almost the exact same thing. Started out raising a note and then found a seed investor, and it turned into a price round. Did you have to convince any of the angels to do a price deal instead of this note, or was it, or they automatically, the note and then converted
Yeah, we did the note. Yeah, we did the note, had cash in the bank and everything.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, we actually didn't finish the note. We just switched it to a price round. So I get you. So you did the note and then converted it. That's interesting. So how'd you find these strategic angels? Let's dig into that a little bit. Were they all Texas people? Are they all just in the Austin Capital Factory ecosystem, or did travel
absolutely
people?
The opposite. Yeah, completely the opposite. I've been around, Austin. I've been fundraising for, different capacities for a few years. And for a pre-launch company, I know that, your sort of Austin standard is always going to be $3 million cap on a convertible note. That's pretty standard. You won't get any pushback if and a lot of people try and push you down to that. And that seems to be kind of the standard across the angel syndicates here, some of the early stage funds. And so I sort of, the way I went about it was I first got a early stage commitment from a strategic investor from the kind of HR space, and a kind of a commitment. But at first I knew I wanted him. I knew he did angel investing, but I brought him on as an advisor, and kind of we got to work together for a while, and that worked really well. He liked what we were doing. And then I said, hey, we're about to start raising a round. Would you mind doing a token investment? I need a token commitment. You're a great advisor, but it would be a good sign to the market. And so he agreed to that. And then I went up to Dallas, actually, because Dallas is great for travel, because there's American Airlines, Sabre, there's a lot of travel tech up there. And I met with, I reached out to my friend who was at Sabre. Oh, no, he was at Kayak, sorry. He was one of the early guys at Priceline, then acquired Kayak. He then did biz dev for Kayak. And so Brian said, I can connect you with some additional travel people. And I went to him. He was an advisor for the last company I was a part of, a company called TripChamp, and he'd been very helpful there. So I thought I need to run this by him, see if he thinks it's got legs. And he made this intro to an investor in Dallas from, who'd been with American Airlines and had actually been the president of Travelocity Business. So I went to her, in business travel, obviously. So I went to her and I said, what do you think? I need your advice. And she really liked it. And she started off by saying that she doesn't believe that people are going to invest in, and I've heard this quite a few times, people won't invest in small business travel management because trying to change behavior is really difficult, trying to force, these sort of clunky tools and trying to get them to pay until it's a really big problem. Typically, that's $1 million in travel spend. But that's why she doesn't invest in the space. And when I showed her that you don't have to change behavior and we're able to do this for free because of the affiliate money, she really liked it. And so I asked her again, willing to do a token investment? And she's like, yeah, I think so. I did a little bit of angel investing. So by that time, I only had, $35K committed towards a 500 round. But then she opened up her network. And I met with the ex-CEO of Sabre, the ex-CEO of Abacus, people, angels all over the place who are mostly X's of things just because, competitive issues. But by the time I actually got to Austin, I'd got a higher cap on my convertible notes. I was at a 4.5 million. So I got a higher cap than I would have gotten if I'd started there. I had incredibly strategic, well-connected angels who had bought in at that valuation. And I basically went to them and said, hey, guys, here's the deal terms, here's who's in, who wants to join. And that really worked well because I wasn't going for my big money first. I went for my strategics and then was able to kind of bring in the big money after that. And, Capital Factory had actually already committed 100,000. And so, because I was the EIR there. But that's kind of hard rolled was I had Capital Factory was like, whatever the valuation you guys get to set, we'll follow that. And then by the time I hit Austin, I had, probably 250,000 committed from a mix of Capital Factory and all these very strategic angels, and was able to kind of get up to that 460 before Moonshots came in.
No, that's cool. That's great. That's a really nice granular detail, high visibility into how you raised it. That's good. When you're asking these, first the advisor and then this woman for token investments, how much, natural response to the like, how much are you thinking? What's your ask on a token investment? Because I kind of like that strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. Our and for me, it was like, this investment is a vote of confidence that's going to help with everything else. But it was basically our minimum raise was our minimum investment was 25K. I did dip slightly below that in a couple cases, for really strategic people, but for the most part, it was 25K and up.
Great. Okay. And then let's talk about Capital Factory. They're an interesting entity. It's like a shared workspace, and then they have a separate venture fund. Is that correct? Or
yeah, it's also got an accelerator program. And so I started off with my first company, Vivo Gig, as a mentee, going through the accelerator program with my team, where we got office space for a certain amount of time. You've got office hours where angels and, investors and press and all that sort of stuff come through, and you schedule office hour sessions. And so I've been through that, this is the third time essentially as part of that being on the sort of accelerator side. But in the meantime, between TripChamp and between TripChamp and Shep, I reached out to Josh and I said, look, I'm looking to start something else. Are you open to me becoming an EIR? And that was great. I was able to sort of network with the other mentors that I'd gotten to know. And that for me is kind of why I went back, was over the years, I've gotten to know most of the investors, most of the, advisors and such. And so it was sort of well networked. And so I kind of went from, I'm now a mentor there as well. So, some days I sit on one side of the table, other days I sit on the other and help newer companies. But it's also, it's office space, co-working, accelerator, and a fund.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's a kind of an interesting hack, being a mentor at a group like this to build your investor network, right?
Absolutely.
That's good. Does Capital Factory, what's their model in terms of investment? Do they follow on deals that other people set, or do they ever lead an investment in startups?
I can't really say if they're 100% model. What they did with me was basically commit a certain amount of money and say, we will invest this, but we won't fund until you have the full round committed. So I was able to go and say, it's not money in the bank, but I have a commitment of 100K, but I have to raise I have to have the other 400K until they'll fund.
Okay, so they'll do a kind of contingent commitment. We'll put in money once you raise. That's
not
helpful,
setting
though.
Terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that was me. I can't really speak to their model. I know they've kind of played with a few. They used to do a matching fund where if you could get 2 mentors or partners to invest, then they would match that up to, I think it was 25K. They went away from that model a little bit, and I think they're making fewer, bigger bets. But with I think with the model that they used with me, I was kind of a guinea pig for that, and I don't know if that's kind of the way they've kept it going.
Yeah. In terms of if you were a founder in Austin wanting to raise money from Capital Factory, is it, finding a way into Josh Baer, or do they have a investment committee or something, or how do you kind of get in front of Capital Factory to try and negotiate?
Yeah, so they primarily invest in the accelerator companies. So it's really best to apply to the accelerator. And then over the course of several months, you basically get to meet with Josh and the other partners and mentors. Back in my day, in the very beginning, 6-7 years ago, I had Josh as an advisor for my first company before I actually joined Capital Factory. Capital Factory is much smaller, 1 floor. Now it's layers and layers of people and experts, and they've got a really good team there. And it now goes over 3 floors. They've had Obama, they've had, Satya Nadella, they've had, Tim Cook. It's kind of become the hub in Austin for, if any press, investors, celebrities, we've had all sorts of politicians, but they come through, that's the place to be. So for me, it's always been a good idea, because maybe I can get an office space somewhere else for less, but I can't be surrounded by all my investors, my advisors, and have these opportunities like I had with Steve Huffman kind of materialize.
Does he do any angel investing?
I don't know. I'm trying to get a way to kind of chat to him about being an advisor. I mean, he would be fantastic, especially because Hipmunk is a consumer travel website like the ones we map. And he sold it to Concur, which is a corporate travel website. Like we are kind of in this realm of, we're just sort of the down market from like a Concur, going after smaller companies.
Yeah, interesting.
So he knows both sides of that.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds really relevant. Let's talk about the Austin kind of funding scene. So Capital Factory, it's got the accelerator, got the fund. What other what else is casting a long shadow in Austin? Austin Ventures is kind of, when I was there, ironically enough, going to business school, Austin Ventures had a seed program, and I think they killed that off. And then I think Austin Ventures isn't raising a new fund anymore, right? So
no, they're not active at all. And so when I started off, 6 years ago, I would go to the Valley or New York, and it was really difficult, because if you didn't have Austin Ventures in your deal, and they didn't have a board seat, then other investors, they were a lot less willing to invest out of their geographic areas at that time. And so Austin Ventures kind of made or broke your kind of raises, especially when you got Series A and beyond. It's actually been good since they broke up, because a lot of their partners have kind of like spread out all over the place and are, started their own seed funds and such. So now there's actually more opportunity to raise, especially for smaller companies. And what we used to see was companies would move out of Austin once they needed to start looking at a B. But obviously technology and people's willingness to invest outside and willingness to travel, it seems to have opened up more. So we're starting to see, companies raising bigger rounds here as well. We've had a few really big ones.
Any fund names come to mind, kind of new and emerging or rising star funds in Austin?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say, though, just to answer your original question, that the other big entity here, especially early stage, would be CTAN, the Central Texas Angel Network. They're actually either the first or the second most active angel group in the entire U.S., which is kind of a stat they hold very proudly. I actually went through that program. We just kind of decided to walk away because they definitely are a little later stage, like to see some revenue, and it's quite a process. It's a lot of due diligence, and I can see why the angels get involved because the group is diligencing and you've got experts in different realms, but it's about a 9 or 10 week program to actually go through the whole thing. And so that can be take quite a strain on what you're doing.
Okay, good. So C10, that's good. How about any venture firms that come to mind, or?
So Moonshots, who led our round, is fantastic. It's two guys are the kind of two principals. They're a growing fund, and very, very founder friendly. Both founders sold multiple companies. One of the guys, Kelly, actually won The Apprentice season 2. So he's been, it's kind of funny watching all that have gone on YouTube. When I was kind of diligencing them, I kind of came across this, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, they between them have built and sold, over 10 companies. The thing with them, though, is they are primarily veteran focused. And that was something that was kind of nice for me, was they invested in us, and we do not have any veterans on our team. But the way they think about the veterans is really it's a good indication of leadership. They sort of said, if you're a vet, you've been through, you've kind of got good, strong leadership principles. But because I'd gotten to know them over the course of a year, they sort of said, look, based on some of the partnerships, the advisors, the investors you've built, there's clearly something here that looks like leadership. We're willing to kind of invest. And so their two priorities are like mobility and leadership, because the other partner, Craig, had sold Ride Scout to Daimler. And so sort of in the travel-ish space, mobility. So we kind of loosely fit one, and, they just really liked what we were doing. And it's sort of experienced, Craig in particular, when he went to Daimler, experienced going from a small startup to a big company where they had to use tools like Concur, and, travel became, a big cumbersome thing to manage within the company, and having to adopt those systems, that when he saw our kind of very lightweight touch to doing this, he kind of got very excited.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then there's Live Oak Ventures. I'm sure I'm going to miss this because there's a new one opening every few months. ATX Seed Fund is another one. Who else? Yeah, I'm kind of blanking because I sort of I wasn't intending on going institutional with this, other than Capital Factory. I just have been talking to Craig for so long that when he came in, I sort of believe in the Reid Hoffman kind of take more money than you need, and than you think you need. And so when we had that offer, even though it was over the $1 million raise, it was great investors, with experience in building businesses. I had investors who had been in the industry but hadn't necessarily always been on the ground floor of creating a business.
Yeah, interesting. Good. So when will you raise again, and will you stay in Texas, do you think? Do you have any thoughts on kind of future funding strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we will stay in Texas. I believe we sort of, I have gone through the whole startup of hiring young, cheap, scrappy talent, and that definitely takes you so far, and that can work. But my co-founders actually worked with me at my last company, and we'd all kind of gone our separate ways and come back. So I knew they were a known entity. But most of us have, not most, but a lot of the team have kids and families and mortgages and such. So we do have a little more focus on work-life balance, but I think we get more done than maybe a younger team learning it on the fly. So we kind of have a good mix. We're not all super vets, but we definitely, between the team, we kind of have people that are learning and people who've done it before. And I think that sort of having that little bit more mature team means we are a little more set in where we are.
Interesting. Yeah. I find that to be too. I've got 2 little kids, and I'll work from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. Then I just shut it off for 2 hours and totally focus on the kids, and then sometimes go back to work.
Yeah. Everyone's in bed. Yeah.
It's nice to have that hard stop, right? Good. Good. Okay.
But yeah, yes, we will. I do anticipate raising our Series A towards the end of the year. I'll sort of start hitting the road on that one.
Yeah, cool. Great. Well, I think this covers a lot of good ground here. Any other pieces of advice for founders in Austin or Texas in general, or anything you would give your younger self if you were doing this all over again?
Yeah, I would say, probably what I would tell myself would be really trust your gut. There were some investors that I spent an awfully long time with, going back and forth, and something just didn't feel right. And I just kept going for whatever reason. They weren't particularly strategic. And in the end, it just got dragged out so long that I walked away. And that's one of the hardest things with this round was there were two big opportunities, very large check sizes that I just it wasn't the right fit, and I probably knew it at the beginning. And it can take a lot of time going through all that work. And often if you get down to that due diligence and at the end of the road after several weeks, I ended up walking away and just trusting in myself that even though I don't have the round committed, I can get it elsewhere, and I don't have to take it in a way that may be detrimental to the company, or just doesn't feel right again. So I think trusting my gut would be a big one. Yeah,
it's good. Very good. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This has been fun. And I guess what's your call to action? Should people just check out what's the URL?
Sheptravel.com.
Sheptravel.com.
SHEP travel.com. Yeah. And actually, we are in a closed beta, but if you go to Product Hunt and look for us there, and you go to the website link through that'll actually give people immediate access to get onboarded. And so, we're targeting companies that are 50, any size company. Some of our initial customers are, 5 people. Anyone who wants to keep track, know what's going on, be able to save a bit on their travel spend, and have immediate visibility into who spent what, how much, where they're going to be, like on what date do you land, what flight are you going to be on. It's pretty important instead of just knowing, well, Tom's going to be in New York sometime next month. It kind of helps you plan a little bit as well. So, yeah.
Interesting. We do, I guess, an informal version of what you do. Like last year when we, two of my marketing gals, Hilda and Helga, are in Norway, and I said, if you can find a flight and accommodation for under $1,000, we'll go to South by Southwest. So we give that sort of, figure it out any way you want. Take a boat, take a train, take a bus, take a camel. But if you can do travel and lodging for $1,000, do it.
But yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's enough for a smaller company. Like, you really don't need this sort of heavy, restrictive, clamp down on your team. If you, and I mean, we've got people, teams up to 3,000 who are asking for access. They just don't want to, they trust their team enough, and they know that people are going to make relatively reasonable choices. They just want to put up some of those guidelines and get the analytics and tracking. And I mean, long term, we've already started talking to airlines and such, where we can use our aggregated travel spend from all these companies to negotiate better rates. So in the long term, and we've got some of those in place already, we can actually get you better prices from the people you're already buying from by yourself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Daniel. This has been great, and I'll catch you next South by Southwest. All right.
Definitely hit me up when you get here.
All right.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thank you.